Hello, my name is Jamie Irvin, and I'm the host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. And today you're watching another episode of HDPR Live. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. As always, we encourage audience participation in these lives. So if you would like to comment, feel free to do so. If you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to do so. Put it in the comment bar. We'll do our best to incorporate your comments just like this and to have you participate in today's conversation. I also wanted to let everyone know that if they wanted to stay up to date with all of the content that we put out, go over to heavydutypartsreport.com today. Subscribe to our weekly email. We're not going to do a bait and switch and try to sell you a bunch of things. This is one email a week that just summarizes all the content that we are producing, because we not only have the live program, we also have our blog and we have our weekly podcast interview. Now, let's talk about today's subject. I'm just going to bring up the theme for today's subject here, and it's all about the evolution of the OEM strategy, how that impacts the aftermarket. We're going to talk to someone who has a lot of information about this and be able to really help us appreciate what's going to happen in 2021 and beyond. And I'd like to introduce our guest today. So our guest is John Adami, and he is oh, I've lost my place. See, this is the problem with going live. Sometimes it doesn't go as planned. So John is an industry veteran. He was born and raised, educated in the Pacific Northwest. He's a background in engineering, technical sales, management, and leadership with industry suppliers. He's also an individual who is active in TMC, HDMA, and SAE. And he is the co-owner of Northwest Heavy Duty, which is a manufacturer's rep agency with a little bit of a unique twist. So without further ado, let's invite John to our program today. John, how are you? Thank you so much for being on the program.
I am well. Thank you, Jamie, and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday. I always look forward to Friday, get to do these lives and have great conversations. As the banner shows, we're talking about the evolution of the OEM strategy, the impact on the aftermarket. And I'd kind of like to get a feel for your organization and what you do. Now, you operate Northwest Heavy Duty, and as I mentioned in the intro, it's a manufacturer's rep agency, but it is unique. Can you explain why it's unique for two other rep agencies?
Yeah, sure. And let me start, Jamie, just by saying thank you. It's a pleasure to be part of your world here briefly on this Friday afternoon, Friday morning for me, or wherever people are rebroadcasting at a later date, right? Yeah, our industry has a number of outstanding rep agencies, and so the concept of a manufacturer's rep is not new to your audience. They might see them engaged at a variety of levels. Typically, where they encounter manufacturers reps are those individuals that go out to dealers, that go out to distributors, that go out to the fleets and engage with them. They have expertise in a certain product line or maybe a range of product lines. That's typical. And they're hired for the relationships that they have and the knowledge of the industry. Our agency does all those things, but we do them in a unique setting. Our mission is specifically to the vehicle OEMs themselves. So we're not engaging with the fleets, distributors, dealers on a daily basis. Instead, we're going into corporate headquarters and we're working with PACCAR, with Daimler, with Volvo, with Navistar. We're a small group, but we have both a West Coast and an East Coast presence. And our job is to kind of infiltrate these organizations, understand how they work and who the decision makers are, and hopefully over the course of time, through that network, we become a positive influence on behalf of our suppliers. So yeah, we have a range of supplier companies that we represent, and on any given day, we could be talking to people in engineering, marketing, product planning, quality, test, certainly purchasing. And it's a challenging exercise because you're working all these horizontal relationships and vertical ones as well. And you are more or less a symphony conductor, making sure that the customer contacts are developing relationships, not just with us, but also with the supplier directly, engineers talking to engineers and executives talking to executives. So that's a little bit about how we just differentiate ourselves. You mentioned a couple of things. Uh, Not every rep agency has the type of background we do. A couple of us have engineering backgrounds. A couple of us have worked for OEMs. There's 3 of us in the agency. I don't want to misrepresent our size, but our industry experience and our activity in industry organizations is, I think, somewhat unique. Oh, one last thing,
Sure.
just being based out in the Pacific Northwest, that right away makes us unique. That's why you've got the name there, Northwest Heavy Duty. We've been based in Bellevue, Washington now for going on 10 years. And you don't think necessarily about the Pacific Northwest being a center of heavy duty truck activity. And then you remember, oh yeah, PACCAR's out here and Daimler's based down in Portland. And the legacy of these companies goes back decade after decade after decade. And it's a neat story. I took time once and wrote about what makes the West Coast a hub of innovation. I think the pioneering spirit actually still exists out here. That's another differentiator.
So when it comes to your background, your experience, and the way that you interact as an agency, plus you work in these associations like TMC and HDAW, your perspective gives us the opportunity to look at things from a little bit of a different angle than a lot of us who are, really rooted in the aftermarket side. Now, we've known for a long time that the OEMs have had a strategy that is going to impact aftermarket. But I'd like to get your perspective really on, what's happening right now. How is that going to impact after the aftermarket side of the industry to this year and beyond?
Sure, that is a great topic, and it is very central to what our agency does. You can look at it a bunch of ways. I would like to look at OEM strategy from 3 perspectives, historical, current, and future, just for the sake of convenience. Just because they've been doing something historically doesn't mean it isn't important. So what are some of the things that automotive and heavy duty OEMs have done to be successful in the aftermarket? First of all, they support their dealerships. And it might not be evident to the person walking in through the front door, but there's a lot of work that goes into building a successful dealership. And it's not all local. A lot of that happens at the corporate level. They are always looking for ways to make their dealers more effective. It goes beyond that to some strategic things like warranty. Warranty has expanded, and inherently, when OEMs offer stronger warranty policies, it drives more parts business into the dealerships, right? That's going to be a default for fleets and owner operators to go and take care of that vehicle at the dealership while it's still under warranty. So the strength of the warranty builds their parts business. But the final and probably most influential factor that we've seen in our industry is this historical trend to add proprietary content, right? To vertically integrate the vehicle so that when you buy a Volvo truck, it comes with a Volvo engine and a Volvo transmission and a Volvo axle. You get the Detroit concept in Freightliner or Western Star vehicles. You look at PACCAR powertrain. All these companies over the last 10, 20 years have been driving that proprietary content, vertically integrating, which also captures a ton of parts business. And I have a metric later on that I can refer to. So those, I'm sure your audience is very familiar with those trends. They're also
Right.
familiar with current practice. Current practice, that's
John, I don't
historical.
want to interrupt, but,
Yeah,
before we move on to current practice, you did trigger a thought.
yeah.
Because of this vertical integration with the manufacturers, is this one of the reasons why CAT exited the engine business? Was it because there was pressure from the manufacturers and CAT didn't have a line of CAT Class 8 trucks? So then these other companies were saying, we don't really want to rely on someone else to build our engines. We want to build them ourselves. Did that play a role in it, or am I off base on that?
No, and I wasn't inside the boardroom when they were making that decision, but you have to believe that they looked across the board at some of the global trends and they saw that as a threat. we reflect a lot on how North America is differentiated from Europe, right?
Mhm.
Europe has always pursued that vertical integration model where a Scania truck comes with a Scania engine. And as Daimler became more influential over the Freightliner and Western Star brand, and Volvo became more influential in the Volvo Mack product line, there was a sense that that European model was coming to North America over
Okay.
the past 10, 20, 30 years. And I'm
Right.
sure Caterpillar factored that into their decision. Couldn't have been easy.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were other factors at play there. But you're absolutely right to identify that as a
Okay.
key.
Okay. So where are we today then? We've kind of talked about the historical
Yeah,
trend with OEMs. Now let's talk about where we are today, and then we'll talk about kind of where we see things going in the future.
sure. So today, I think one of the easiest trends to spotlight would be the trend towards the all makes and private label business, right? You didn't see that emphasis 10 years, 20 years ago, but the truck OEMs across the board have said, look, we're not capturing enough of the parts business post warranty. What do we have
Mhm.
to do? So they have made a concerted effort to go after the second, third, fourth owner of these vehicles with their private label parts. And they've said, look, we're saying this is a very good quality part, but we're also saying it's going to be a better value, and you can trust us. We're going to have it in stock when you need it. Oh, and then they're piling onto this by saying we're not going to just handle our own products. We're going to do all makes. So that's a trend. I think the latest evolution of that theory or that thought is now you see all makes stores, right?
Mhm.
Not pop-up stores, but standalone stores that are separate from a dealership that handle these private label parts, and that phenomenon is not going away, and it's going to grow significantly.
Well, I can give you a little bit of perspective from the aftermarket in my experience. So, like 10 years ago, when I was selling parts, the dealers were going around with their salespeople, and there was like these nice, clean lines between what the dealer sales representative was offering and what the aftermarket. We didn't
Hmm.
expect them to really take a lot of brake business from us, but we knew that it was going to be an uphill battle with filtration because that was always connected to the engine and warranty. When I came back in the industry in 2016 and started selling parts on the aftermarket side for Truck Pro, I found this significant change is that now all of a sudden I was fighting for every sale, whether it was wheel end or transmission, differential. Some of the real strong points that that company once had were being eroded because we had not only we had the direct aftermarket competitors to worry about, but we also had all the dealerships coming in
Mhm.
and trying to get that business. So the competition level really felt, in my opinion, really felt like it had increased quite a lot in that time period from when I was selling parts in, like, let's say 2009. And then
Right.
when I sold my business and came back into the industry in late 2016, I definitely noticed that significant shift in level of competition.
All right. Now, and would you also agree that the customer is the winner in that scenario, or I'm curious because I'm asking you that question. I
Mhm.
would think that that level of competition has been good for the fleets and operators.
Well, I would, yeah, I would go along with that. I would say anytime the competition is at that level, the opportunity to leverage that against your suppliers and to get better, more favorable pricing, maybe to extend warranty coverage on aftermarket parts, things like that. You can definitely leverage that. I would say that when I asked executives, not just the company I work for, but I love working with manufacturer reps. So I would bring them
Mhm,
out
mhm,
and we'd go
mhm.
out into the field. And
Right.
every time I got the chance, whether it was a manufacturer rep or an executive, I would ask them a question. I would say, what makes your business unique and different from your nearest competitor? In essence,
Right.
why should people buy from you instead of the competition? And inevitably, they would talk about product feature and benefits and of their products, and they would talk about years of experience in the industry. And I would say, isn't that the barrier to entry to be in your position?
Absolutely. I would agree with
And
that.
yeah, and there was a lot of people who were kind of like, huh, Yeah, you're right
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
And that to me kind of dovetails into what we're talking about, where you have so many people competing for the same
Hmm.
business,
Right.
providing comparable products.
Right. Well, we're going to circle back to a topic. I'll touch on it now, but then I think we'll do a deeper dive later in the conversation. But where I believe that we're going in terms of OE strategy is all about data.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's some givens. There's some absolute non-negotiables that you have to deliver if you're going to be successful in this market. But data, I think, is going to be a big differentiator. It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen that in the work that I've done in the last 2 years. Data is a converse at the top of everyone's list
Right.
of things that they need to talk about. And when I was first entering the business, let's say around 1998, one of my mentors always said that this is a people business, and people are the most important asset that any company has.
Mm,
I would say that that still is true, but I would say now that there is a competitor, and that is data.
that's an
That
interesting way to
people
phrase it.
and yeah,
Yeah.
people and data now are the two most important assets a
Sure.
company possesses.
Yeah. Well said.
So where do you see this going? This is where we're at. There's heavy competition. The aftermarket is under a lot of pressure. Not only is
Mm.
there more aftermarket competitors than ever before, but now, as you said, we've got the OEs coming in with their all makes programs. Where do you see this going, and how does data become relevant in that conversation?
Okay. Well, there's a few different ways to look at it, but let's and you know what? If in a normal year, you and I'd probably be heading down to Garland, Texas, and we'd be part of HDAW, HDAD, and we'd hear some expert speakers on the topic, and they'd help us unpack this. But
Right.
here's where I see the whole data situation going. Let's start with the customer. The customer wants uptime. They have been very clear that here they purchase an asset, they need a return on that asset. They're not going to be successful if they're not able to have that truck and that trailer out in the field delivering freight. So the OEMs, understandably, have said, "That's what you want. We're going to give it to you. We're going to get you as close to 100% uptime as we possibly can." And they've made it the tagline of every marketing piece that they put out there. It's on the internet, it's on the bottom of every email, right?
Yeah.
So they say the next step the OEMs take is if that's the mission, then to support it, we're going to establish a partnership. We are going to promote data collection. We are going to put tools on the vehicles that collect data. That's the job of the sensors and of the ECMs. And then as a company, the OEMs are available to assist with the analysis of that data, to manage that data, and most importantly, translate the data into information. As you know, I mean, data by itself is worthless.
Yeah.
It's the information you can extract from it in a timely manner, and that's actionable, that differentiates data from information. So there's a couple interesting things about that. The OEM is saying, boy, if I've got all these terabytes of data coming off a vehicle, is there any way I can monetize that? Is there, that's got to be of value to someone. So it's a new potential revenue stream for the OEM. But it also is a sort of a contract between the OEM and the customer. If the OEM says, look, I know the health and well being of your vehicle, I know its location, and I know the most effective way to triage and repair that vehicle if repair actually is necessary.
Mhm.
So you give me permission to manage your data, and I will make sure that your vehicle stays on the road and only comes off the road when predictive maintenance tells us it's absolutely necessary. We'll schedule it in advance. We'll know where to go to get your vehicle turned around as quick as possible. Is that idealistic? Yes, it is.
Mhm.
But it actually is something the fleets really, really want. They want this kind of guarantee and feel good. Now, in an environment where the fleet could do a utopian environment for the fleet, they would have all
Mhm.
the mechanics they need. They would have warehouses full of parts, and they would be scattered all across the country or North America or whatever their operating environment is. They could do it themselves, and they would do it the way they want, when they want, how they want, and at the price they want. But there aren't enough technicians to go around. There aren't enough. There's not enough commercial building space in today's environment. You need to know what your business is. You need to focus on that. You need to execute, and then you
Yes.
need to partner with other people who are experts in their field. And the OEMs are saying, they're putting up their hand and saying, hey, we're the experts. We built this truck. We
Yeah.
manage the suppliers. We know what goes into it, and we'll help you operate it. And what's the bottom line? They're going to sell more parts.
Right. So let me ask you, how did the pandemic in 2020 affect the trend?
Great question. I was thinking about that, and this might sound counterintuitive, but broadly speaking, I don't think it did.
Okay.
I really don't see that the 2020 as disruptive as it was on personal level and societal level. It didn't change freight movement that much. The way I look at it is this, Jamie: the winner in the parts business is the one who has the right part when it's needed. You can
Yes.
almost take price out, but if you have the part that is needed, then you're going to be successful. And so it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, e-commerce has been exploding over the last decade, let's say,
Yeah.
especially accelerating in the last 5 years. But did the pandemic change that fundamentally? I don't think so.
Maybe the only
So
the only the only way that I've seen it change is some of the people who were like resisting a little bit before the pandemic. For example, they were resisting e-commerce, or they were resisting using video conferencing tools
sure.
and advanced video communication tools. And now maybe they're saying, well, okay, I have to now. So
Right.
the pandemic maybe kind of pushed them over the edge to adopt some of that. That's probably the only real
But
change
why?
I saw.
I agree, but why? Because that was the easiest way to get the parts.
Yeah.
So you're right. There's a lot of analogies. The restaurant that offers outdoor cafe seating is going to be better than the one that can't. The church that has a digital platform and can stream their services online is going to draw more attendees than a church that can't. In the parts business, the person that can take an order over the internet is going to grow their business. And if they weren't on board before, after 2020, they certainly are. So I
Right.
would agree. But the underlying principle didn't change, and the underlying trend didn't change. I worked with McKay to understand the parts business going back to the 80s,
Mhm.
mid late 80s, which also is around the time where I started my career in this industry. And in 1989, the OEM share of the aftermarket was somewhere around 35%, right, of
Okay.
total parts sales.
Right.
And today that market is somewhere around 55%.
Wow.
That trend did not change, right? The OEMs are doing whatever it takes to grow their share of that business. So,
Mhm. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is the OEMs are looking at it and saying, look, if we can be as vertically integrated as possible,
mhm,
and if we can be the specialist in keeping commercial vehicles operating so that fleets can go do what they are designed to do, right?
mhm,
Maybe you're in food service, or you're a vocational fleet and
right.
you're doing oil and gas work or logging or whatever.
Mhm,
We're going to be that partner in uptime, and we're going to try to vertically integrate as best we can to give you full support over the entire lifetime of the vehicle, first, second, third, fourth owner.
mhm,
That's a pretty, and then you just gave us a statistic that shows that over the last 30 plus years, they have eroded the aftermarket by quite a margin, and they have now over 50% of the available market in parts. So is it completely doom and gloom for the aftermarket? The economy looks like it's going to be relatively strong in 2021. Is there opportunities for entrepreneurially minded people to go out into the market and compete?
Like never before. No, okay. So I'm guilty of being an optimist by nature, but I don't think I'm taking a Pollyanna attitude here. I absolutely believe there's a ton of opportunity. The competition is real.
Mhm.
If you were to take anybody's annual report, and I'll use PACCAR as an example, you'll find out that their parts business is broken out as a separate report within
Okay.
the annual report. Why? Because it's hugely important in terms of total top line revenue and bottom line profit. So don't expect the OEMs to not be a factor. They will. But we have such an incredibly dynamic landscape right now. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for entrepreneurs. You know that out of turmoil comes opportunity. You and
Yeah.
Scott Bolts have talked about it, and others. So you can think of restaurants. Yeah, a lot of them closed,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that there isn't a latent drive, an opportunity for new restaurants to be opened when the pandemic impact has been neutralized. Um, Retail space has been hugely impacted. Brick and mortar retail space has been hugely impacted by online retailing. But that doesn't mean that those buildings, those malls, can't be converted into other useful operations. Maybe it becomes a
Mhm.
distribution hub, right, for FedEx and UPS. Anyway, one more, I think, kind of just global look. People talk about businesses failing in 2020, but they're not looking at how many tax IDs have been applied for, right? There are entrepreneurs looking around and saying, it's a brand new landscape with brand new needs. I'm going to take advantage of that. In our industry, absolutely. There have been some underlying fundamentals that have been driving this industry for decades. They need to be safer. They need to operate cleaner, and they need to operate more efficiently. So if
Right.
you, as an entrepreneur, can come into our industry with a new approach that addresses any of those, you have a fantastic opportunity, right? So I happen to be, with an engineering background and having worked with some really brilliant engineers. I'm a big fan of innovation,
Mhm.
and there again, if that's your gig, you got to be very excited about the way trucks are going, right? Um, the acronym a lot of people throw around is ACE, automated, connected, electrified. Those trends are going to be hugely important, and if you can speak into that, if you have technology that is going to be, that advanced driver assistance space, or if it enables the flow of communication inside the vehicle and between the vehicle and infrastructure, between the vehicle and the cloud, then there's opportunities there. And then efficiency goes back to something we were talking about, Jamie, vehicle uptime.
Mhm.
If I've got this asset, I need it to make money, and so if you can help in that way, yes, you're going to have some phenomenal opportunities.
Right. But if you're thinking that you can just go out and do what your grandfather or even father did in heavy duty parts on the aftermarket side and recreate the success they had in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it's not going to happen.
No, I think that would be. I would think that would be the best recipe. I think that if Dad and Grandpa, I think if they were all about relationships,
Mhm.
great, great. We still are a very relationship-driven industry. But to your point, you add relationships, and you take relationships and add data to that. That's the new landscape.
Yeah.
Um, it's the old models don't work, and any businessman knows that if you're not growing your business is dying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I have another thought on that. I just wanted to
yeah,
get your opinion. So it's been my opinion that where the opportunity could be in manufacturing in the heavy duty parts aftermarket side of the business is in focusing on niche manufacturing that solves a real problem. And that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like if you can go out and you can make something that makes those trucks operate more efficiently, safer, that the owner of the truck can get more revenue out of the truck, and you can manufacture those things, maybe even improving on an OE design, and do so where you really, really become the dominant person who really has that expertise in that one narrow gap, you could do really, really well.
Well, now you're talking. Now you're in my wheelhouse, because I have spent a lot of time with the OEMs, and I know what they do well, and I know where they're capacity constrained or limited. Um, these companies think about their truck as a system, all right, and it's a very complex system. It's humbling to go into a truck plant in Chillicothe or back in the Carolinas and look at the number of component parts that need to come together to form this amazing piece of machinery. So inherently, the truck OEM cannot be an expert in every single element of the vehicle. Maybe it's the HVAC system, right? There was a time 3-4 decades ago where every company had a team of people responsible for the HVAC system because they were literally designing the condensers, the evaporators, the control system, the soup to nuts. Today, that system is purchased. It's not engineered by the OEM. It's engineered by an HVAC expert, right? And they stand behind that product. They provide the warranty. They designed it, and it's their responsibility. So break that down. Now go from system, subsystem, go to the component level. Same principle applies. Maybe there's an element within the HVAC system where you've come up with a clever way to make the system more affordable, more reliable, more resistant against corrosion. Then you need to be able to take that, own that, and promote it. And yeah, those opportunities just continue to expand. We see it in suspensions, we see it in lighting, we see it in seating. It's vision systems. The breadth is really amazing. It takes a lot of engineering to build a robust truck that can last 1 million miles,
Yeah,
and be cost effective.
of course.
So yeah,
Yeah. So that is definitely an opportunity. Now, speaking of opportunity, in preparation for our conversation, you mentioned that you believe that the OES have a terrific outlook for a very important segment of the parts market. Why is that? What are we talking about there?
well, I think it's a blend of things. I think the thought in the back of my mind really had to do with the data. If you take, we throw around an acronym, we don't always understand what it means, but IoT is the Internet of Things, right?
Right.
And this is the ability to have your cell phone talk to your refrigerator while you're at the store to find out, what's inside and what am I supposed to go buy. Apply that to trucks, right? Apply that to a wheel end. Apply it to a reefer system, where you're transporting vaccine. Apply it to any number of systems that you can think of. They are all capable of generating information. I'm a wheel end that's overheating, or I'm a load of beef that the temperature, or maybe it's a vaccine, right, where I don't have temperature control anymore, and within a couple of hours I'm at risk of damaging my load.
Yeah, a life-saving load.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have so many decisions that I have to make. Should I inform the driver or not? Right?
Right.
Should I inform the back office or not? And the amount of information that needs to be handled, needs to be analyzed, managed, communicated is just astounding. And so there's another. I stumbled on this one last year. The idea that you might replace a brake shoe.
Mhm.
Imagine that your truck is under warranty, but you're in the middle of nowhere, and you take a non-genuine OEM part. You take a replacement part. It's not a genuine OEM part, and you replace that brake shoe. And a couple months later, you're at the dealer, and they're in their computer and they're going, like, I see you had a repair issue here. It looks like this is not one of our OEM parts, so we're going to deny this warranty claim. Yeah,
Yeah.
that level of intelligence is where we are going as an industry. It is not hypothetical. It's something that will happen, and it's remains to be seen how it's going to affect the parts business. I think a lot of other people have commented before. I'll just echo their sentiments. Watch what's happening in the construction and ag business. Watch what's happening in automobile. I'm not suggesting that the OEMs are destined to control all repair activity down the road. The Right to Repair Act, states like Massachusetts have been very, very vocal about that, and in a way leading the industry on that front. But it's got to be very, very concerning and very, very important to the independent aftermarket that they get a piece of that. That right to repair, and they get that visibility into where the data is coming from, and they understand how to use it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, I really wanted to just thank you, John, for coming on the program today and talking to us about this. I think it's an important subject. It's something that we have to continue to really discuss as an industry, because it's important for the future and to understand where we're going so that people can make good quality decisions. And you gave us a perspective that otherwise we wouldn't have if we only looked at the aftermarket side. So thank you very much.
Well, let's make it a two-way conversation. I have a lot of respect for your audience. They have a tremendous depth of knowledge. I fully expect them to call me out on, perceptions that are a little off base from their perspective, and they can educate me. Thanks for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you. Thanks, John. My name is Jamie Irvin. I'm the host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. You've been watching an edition of HDPR Live. If you want to watch the replay of this, you can go over to heavydutypartsreport.com. Also, in the show notes of this episode, we'll make sure that there are links there so that you can connect with John, and that way you'll be able to reach out to him directly. Next week, we're going to be interviewing Alex Parker of Redline Detection. We're going to talk about how they have really become a dominant player in that part of the diagnostic system, and how they add value to not only just the truck OEs, but also to the aftermarket. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great weekend.